Hi, everybody. Welcome back to the Dave Emmons Show. And glad that Facebook, I have a lot of friends here at Facebook. I can appreciate that. And I thank every one of you for viewing and checking into the show and listening to a lot of the subject content I have. Of course, I got coming up a weather expert, a PhD. I've got a spiritual expert coming up. He's also a doctor. And I've got a lot of experiencers, and I have one today, Mike Walker from California. And I'm going to get right into what he's doing. And sounds like a great guy and great experiences. So I want to flash my marketing because this is the only way I got the market on social media. This is my book, They, and it's still out there selling on Amazon, Barnes and Noble, and Kindle. I want everybody to know that. Sorry about that, Mike. I'm kind of stealing your show here. But and here's my second book, and this is Senseless Wars and Conflicts, and that's my actual combat experience writings. And look into that book. And my third book, which will be published before long, will be Angels and Supernatural Entities. So that will be an interesting book, and it's going to be a larger book. Mike Walker, let me tell you a little bit about him from California. He's had some close encounters, experiences with UFOs, ATs, and he goes through a biblical, I guess, a chronological and biblical accurate thing with angels and what he's going to be talking a little bit about what's in my third book, and he's probably got the could be adding some stuff on there for me for interest. He talks about orbs. He's been on the Travel Channel, UFO Witness, and he's been on radio shows that co-host, and right there you'll see it, Paranormal Friday. He's using his background because it was too late for him that he didn't know it was on there, but it's fine with me. It's okay. It's really good. Promote yourself. I want the word out there. I want enlightenment, and I want disclosure done. And the show is called Paranormal Fridays, and take put an ear to that show on a Friday night. And let's see what else Mike's involved with. He's he talks about vortex in the clouds, and then he's seen UFOs directly above him. He's even had orbs and spheres and been able to capture pictures. He's had a brief appearance on channel, as I mentioned, UFO Witness, and he's been on a documentary called Experiencer as well. That's great. That's really getting. I'd like that. Get the word out as much as you can, and of course, paranormal radio podcast shows, Paranormal Fridays, and he's got a www site that he'll tell us about here pretty soon. He has a meditative craft shop. He gets into healing and also that type of thing, healing and spirituality. He has a co-host that she it gets into mediumship, and she's a healer, and he'll tell you more about the co-host and his show and what he does. Uh, he is an enthusiast, and I love that too. I like people to get involved and get their hands dirty in this subject, the UFOs and ETs. I really enjoy that. He can detail a part of the ship that he's familiar with. He sees a lot. Uh, but the biblical accuracies is something also it'd be interesting to hear about what Mike has to say about that. And and I always have these notes, and they're always I always give too much of it, but I like giving my guests the opportunity for people to know you and know what you're doing, and we all bless you for what you're doing, getting this word out. And there's angelic messages, and we're going to be talking to Mike Walker from California. Have anything else to add with that, buddy?
No, that was very well said. Thank you so much, Dave. I appreciate that.
And sorry about advertising a little bit on your time.
No, I'm interested in that third book that's coming out for
Oh, okay.
sure.
All right. Yeah, maybe a month or two. It'll be out. I can't really talk about it too much because the copyright hasn't been submitted,
Sure.
and my publisher is they advised me, said don't talk about too much of the title, content, or anything until the copyright's out there. So you take it away, Mike. Tell us about how you got involved in this UFO subject.
Okay. Very well. Yeah. Well, this was back in 1985 in South Hayward, California. I was 12 years old. Um, and this is what I believed was my first UFO experience at the time. Uh, it had just turned dark. I was living actually across the street from my old childhood home that we spent a lot of time with. we actually had to sell that home, and we ended up being taken in from the Lopez family that lived directly across the street from us. So they became more than family to me and my mother and my little sister. But other than that, we would just move wherever whoever would take us in. You know, my mom was a bartender my whole life, and I could tell you every bar, every name of every bar in Hayward by the time I was 6 years old. But had a kind of a rough childhood. But I'm not going to pull that violin out right now. I just letting you know that we were living across the street in the Lopez family. It had just turned dark, and I remember walking out that screen door and walking into the street and running into my friend Chano. And I don't think there was much discussion there about what we were going to do. We just started walking around the block. And before we even got to our first turn around the block, I was taking notice of the sky. It was pretty. Like I said, it had just turned dark. The moon was bright. It was lighting up the clouds really nice and white. And the clouds were pretty low that night too. So they appeared to be moving kind of quick. Everything was normal up until the point where I noticed a section of the clouds began to swirl. Not a tornado natural phenomenon type of swirl. It was a crisp, clean swirl, and it began very slow. It began pretty small, and I had to do a double take. And when I did a double take to kind of zone in on it, I said, okay, let me focus in on this to really see if that's indeed what I'm witnessing here. And when I did that, it started to swirl faster and faster. It went from slow to fast. So
Wow.
I only had time to have a couple of thoughts that ran through my head before I black out. And the first thought was, are those clouds starting to swirl? And then my next thought was, oh my God, yes, they're swirling fast. And I blacked out. My very next conscious moment, I was about a half a block away, and now my arms are to my side like a soldier, and I'm looking straight up at the belly of a flying saucer. And I know what I'm looking at immediately. I've heard of these things. I knew what I was looking at. I was directly, if I had my etch a sketch, I could probably throw it, and it was probably about 150 to 200 feet above the foam pool that was near us. And I was my arms to my side, my head straight up. I'm looking at the belly of this craft that has a blue light that's sporadically flashing on the belly of the craft. And as this blue light flashes, it's illuminating parts of the actual craft itself. So I can actually see the skin of the craft. And I see integral wiring, I see tubes, um, a lot going on. I use C3PO's stomach for an example on Star Wars. Just a bunch of wires, integral, just a lot of stuff going on.
Covered with some kind of metal or some kind of a see-through clear thing.
So no, I was only seeing the the tubes and the electrical components and when this light would flash. And this light was flashing on random parts of the belly of the craft. And to me, this is where it gets cerebral, because to me it looked unbalanced. It wasn't symmetrical. Um, it seemed to be having some kind of electrical issue. And so some of my first thoughts after I were, if this is a UFO and advanced technology that I'm witnessing, how come it seems to have some kind of electrical issue?
Mm-hmm.
And soon as I thought that, it snapped out of whatever electrical issue that I thought it was in, and it began to put on a all-out multicolored light show. And it started from the perimeter of the ship, and it worked its way to the center, and it worked its way clockwise, counterclockwise. It was balanced. It was coordinated. It was all the colors that you can possibly imagine. And this light show also began pretty slow, and then it steadily got faster and faster and faster. And to me, I remember thinking that, now they're showing off.
Yeah.
Now they're showing off because I suggested that maybe they had an electrical issue and they wanted to let me know that there's nothing wrong with them. Um, so the light show went on for probably 40, 40 seconds or so. Um, and it stopped. The light stopped, and then the craft glided ahead of us a little ways to where now I can see the entire ship as a whole now. I'm not just looking at the belly. And it's your typical disc-shaped UFO.
Mhm.
And it does this little tiny little wobble, and then it's gone. It took off near the speed of light, is the only way that I can describe it. It took off east towards the Hayward Hills. If I would have blinked my eyes, I probably just would have thought that it disappeared. But I seen it.
Yeah.
I seen it move east. Didn't make a sound. It was the most smoothest. The Dave, forget the clouds spiraling. Forget the UFO. You know what? That speed really blew me away.
Right.
The way in which it took off, it was like a cartoon. It really messed me up. I was like so shocked from that. Then I was able to move. See, back then when I was a kid, I chalked it up to I didn't want to miss a second of it. That's why I was standing so stiff.
What time
That's why my arms
was it
were,
at night, Mike? What time was it?
yeah, it was probably uh, it was about 8:30. It was probably I believe it was like a July of '85. It had just turned dark, and I was looking forward to going into junior high school from elementary school.
Mhm. Well, that's when they usually come out. And also, I've had the same experience. I saw flashing blue lights underneath the craft and also 150 feet up. And you said you were standing there straight. You might
Yeah.
have been picked up. Did you have any missing time?
Well, see, that's the most confusing part of my experience is that vortex that I experienced a half a block away. That's when it started. I believe that's when they took me, Dave. And it's taken me so many years. Only within the last 2 years, I've been really putting some important pieces of this puzzle together and being brave enough to call it what it was. But for many years, Dave, I didn't even discuss the vortex in the clouds. I just wanted to talk about the UFO because everyone knows about the UFO. And hey, I had one,
Right.
you know. Uh, but no, it was the vortex in the clouds in which they captured not only my attention initially, but I believe they captured my consciousness. I really do. I'm not setting any of this in stone. I'm here to learn about the phenomenon because I'm obviously passionate about it because I know it's real.
Well,
And
Dr. David Jacobs, if you read his book, he's got several books, but he says I heard him lecture one time and I talked to him afterwards about my experiences, but he said, if you're within 150 feet of a craft, he said, they got you. He said, you are their subject. And he said, if they're that close and if you can see the belly of it and you can see things happening, he says, they got you. What they did is they probably beamed you up and whatever. And that's why you ended up standing straight because your body was under tension of magnetic energy, apparently. So
yeah,
also I saw the craft also take off real fast, like you said. I mean, it's just gone. Yeah. So
wow,
it all makes sense, brother.
man, yes. So, here's one thing that really shocked me even more was after the craft took off, I realized I was able to move. And I looked to my left because the last time I knew my friend Chano was to my left. So I looked to my left and Chano was indeed still there, standing to my left. And I said, "That was the UFO, huh?" And he goes, "Yeah." and that really shocked me. Uh, he wasn't apparently he wasn't too impressed with it, so that was a whole nother shock on a whole nother level. We continued to walk around the block, and it was just a really odd rest of the way back home. I could tell that he didn't want to talk about it. I wanted to talk about it. As we started wrapping around our final turn of the block, I see Chano's older brother Peter and a couple of his older friends out in front of their home, just chatting it up, shooting the talk. And we approached them, and I had no issue bringing up the fact that we just witnessed, this UFO. So I go, "Hey guys, we just seen this UFO." And one of the kids goes, "Oh yeah, we seen it. It went that way." And he actually pointed to the east. So he had me going there for a split second, but it didn't take very long to look into their eyes and realize they were just messing with me.
Yeah. And your friend was probably, he knew his family or his friends wouldn't accept what he was saying, and apparently they weren't very open minded about it, or they could have erased his mind pretty well. I had a friend, same situation when I saw my second UFO, and my friend had the same characteristics where he couldn't remember all the things. I had some things happen after the incident and he didn't, and so sometimes they respond to different people and they actually upload more into one person. It all depends on your DNA frequency and your consciousness. Actually, they can find that out. And Mike, they can really find that out. But your friend, as long as he saw something, that's probably the main thing. If you can get that out of him, that'd be great.
That's all I was trying to get out of him when school finally started up. Um, I was going around telling my friends this great experience that we had, and I was a bit of a class clown, and that really didn't work towards my case very well.
Right. Yeah.
Chano, on the other hand, was a little bit more of a serious, and his family, you're right. You're right, Dave. His family was more of a serious type of family, and he was more into football and things like that. But when
Religion has something to do with it too. Religion, yes. They're afraid to talk about things in church.
he
I'm
was a
afraid.
religious,
I'm afraid to
yes,
go in
his
church
whole
and talk
family
about
was
it. Yeah.
religious.
Right.
It, I used to go around to not only my friend Chano's family's church, but my friend Francisco Macias across the street. We would go to their church, and just
Right.
exploring the
Uh-huh.
weird phenomenon of religion.
Mhm.
But yeah, we would track down Chano, and I go, "Chano, can you let these guys know that what we experienced was real?" And he would say something like, "Man, Mike, you're still talking about that?" And I'm like, Yes, I'm talking about this. I'm going to talk about this for the rest of my life." And he
Oh,
would just give me a simple, "Yeah."
oh, yeah, okay.
That's all
Now,
I can get out of him.
let's do a follow up on that. Have you had any lucid dreams of regression from this event after that?
So I had plenty of odd dreams after this event. Um, and only within the last 2 years, I call them what they truly probably more than likely were either I had visions. I believe I've actually had visions. I believe I've had naturally surfaced memories through dreams, through lucid dreams that seem to continue from one night to the very next. I remember waking up in these dreams like, "Hey, here I am again
Right.
in this long white hallway with doors to my right." And I would test the waters and go, sure enough, I'd open up this door, and there's the giant room I'll describe to you a little bit later.
Okay.
There was a section of the UFO I believe I became a little familiar with. um, but yeah, I had a dream of the a wheel within a wheel. Now I know what a wheel within a wheel is, after I've studied the phenomenon, Ezekiel's vision of God and things like that. But heck, when I was 12 years old, I remember having this dream where the wheel within the wheel was hovering and rotating above my childhood home of 28080 East 11th Street, my original childhood home, which was also my grandpa Jack's home that I love very, very much. And he was in a wheelchair. So I remember seeing these two rings above his peak of the home, and I was standing on the driveway looking up, and one wheel's going one way towards me. One wheel's going away from me. And it was just so weird. But you know what? I wasn't very impressed because I had just witnessed a UFO not too long ago, and I know what UFOs look like, and they're super cool. And they put on multicolored light shows and they move like the speed of light. This was just a couple of wheels rotating in a bold medium pace, and I figured, heck, I might as well. There's some kids out here playing. There's a guy mowing his lawn. I might as well, point out the wheel within the wheel that's hovering and floating and rotating above my home. And I go to tell some of the kids, and they can't hear me. They don't see me. I go to the man that's mowing his lawn. He can't hear me. I put my arm on his shoulder. He doesn't feel me. So it was just really frustrating. And for years, I thought, wow, that was a weird dream. I don't know why I just couldn't let this dream go as I got older. And, as a matter of fact, I didn't bring it up very much because I really felt like it discredited my actual UFO experience. Like, hey, what's next, Mike? Did you ride Nessie? And,
let's yeah
what's next?
yeah let's talk about
So,
the size, Mike. The size compared
okay.
to the first one you saw and the wheel within a wheel. What were the sizes of these craft? What was wheel and wheel? Was it smaller?
Yeah, so it was hovering above the peak of our small home, and it was probably the equivalent of that section of our house that had the peak. I would say 15 to 20 feet in diameter
Okay.
is what these wheels were, and they were dark in color, not black, but like almost like a gunmetal or something.
Yeah.
And
Typical.
yeah, so I mean, you don't wake up from visions like, oh man, that was a crazy vision. It just took me years to actually call it a vision,
Right.
and then it's movies and things like that would trigger me, like Jodie Foster with the Contact. The movie Contact came out, and there was a device that she got into that resembled the what I seen.
Right. The Ezekiel wheel. Yeah.
Yeah, she got into that to go into a portal to go visit her father that had passed away. And that movie, I mean, I got so emotional from that. Um,
I can tell you there's a theory out there, and I see where some people have the consciousness and they're good receivers. Sometimes these craft and ETs can show themselves to you, but maybe not to somebody that's even close to you. They don't see or hear what you're seeing. It's
right.
that third eye thing. And so it's the pineal gland that
Oh yeah,
is the center of everything, consciousness.
absolutely.
And if you're a good receiver, you pick this up. And my wife actually accuses me of having a overactive third eye, in which I do. I can see through things, I can read people. So, but that's another thing. But what you're saying about your friends not seeing it, I'm trying to put that theory out there to you to think about, because you might be a good receiver and you're receiving dreams and the consciousness downloads in regressed lucid dreams, Mike.
Okay. Yeah. Um, I started watching Ancient Aliens, and they started talking about Ezekiel's vision of God, and I was never really a religious person. I always questioned the fact that I had this bracelet around my wrist that said I was a Roman Catholic. You know, I even questioned when I joined the Navy. What's your religion? I was just like, well, it's Roman Catholic. That's what I've been told. That's what my family says. That always never sat right with me. So I did question the whole religion thing. To me, it seemed really serious, and to me it just, like, where's the humor, where's the love? I mean,
Yeah,
obviously there's the love, but
right.
part of love is having a humor. And so it just didn't make too much sense to me. But I started looking. I had no choice but to look into Ezekiel's vision of God, and all of a sudden, I just started having these overwhelming feelings of things that I was never interested in, Dave. Like the Book of Enoch, the Dead Sea Scrolls, Jerusalem, the Third Temple. I became obsessed with making sure that this third temple was being built one way or another. Uh,
I that's where I went from the Book of Enoch, Mike. I started from there and got into my third book, and I studied all those. And Ezekiel, he was abducted too. I mean,
yeah,
there's a big thing there.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And he's
Um,
Earth and all this other stuff, just like Enoch.
he
Uh,
was a priest and a prophet. Yeah, Enoch was taken. I think he was 12 years old too, Dave. And I believe from what I've read, he became Metatron.
Right. Well, they lived long lives back then. Noah was 960 years old. Enoch was about 1,000 years old. Methuselah, which was Noah's grandfather, he lived to be 1,000 years old. But some of them were taken off planet, so they don't really know how much longer they do live. But some ET species live hundreds of years. That was taken away from us after the Garden of Eden and the original sin, in which the reptilians were involved in that one. So it's a long story, but go ahead and go into these other lucid dreams and other things that's happened to you in your life, because things do happen in a series and they keep
Okay.
happening to you. Go ahead.
Okay. So I know that these dreams, these visions happened very soon after my experience because like I said, I remember reflecting on the fact of seeing the wheels going. That doesn't impress me. So I had another vision that this was more of a short one, but I'm running from a crashing flood, and all of a sudden I run up onto Stonehenge, and I jump up on one of the stones, and I get to the top, and the crashing flood just subsides just near the very tips of Stonehenge. And it's just here we are with another dream. As a 12-year-old boy, I wasn't into Stonehenge. I'm not going to lie to you and say that, that it may have passed the TV screen at one point, but I could tell you for sure that I was not into Stonehenge. I couldn't tell you anything about it. But here I am running from a crashing flood, and I hop up onto one of the stones for safety with ease, mind you.
Mhm.
Which only recently I reflected on that vision, and I wondered why was it so easy for me to jump up on these stones? Aren't these stones, huge? And I look up, they're about 15 feet from what I gather. Some of the larger stones are about 15 feet tall. So there's a silly part of me that started thinking, well, what do you what's the message here? What's the message of this vision that I had? Was I a giant? Was I a giant? Was this a you know um I had visions of the wheel within the wheel. I had a vision of the flood at Stonehenge. Um I can't think of there's another one that I want to share before I go on with these other ones. But jumping from a mountaintop, here I am on this spiral mountain. It's got a spiral road, and I'm walking on this spiral road. And just before I get to the very summit of the peak of this mountain, I look off onto the cliff, and I decide that I just want to fly. And I do. I just jump straight off the cliff, and I begin to fly with confidence. I knew I was going to be able to fly. I could feel the wind hitting my skin. I could see the clouds that I want to pierce. And I'm wondering to myself, am I going to feel these clouds? And I can feel the subtle differences in the air as I'm going through these clouds. And it's just so natural for me to fly. And I want to go straight up higher and higher. And I want to start breaking more of the veils of the clouds. And then the thought came to my head, hey, while I'm up here so high, I might as well check on God. I might as well see if God's here.
Mhm.
And soon as I pierce through that last thin layer of clouds, I wake up. Just really weird dreams that I didn't really share with people. until much later in life.
Let me give you some backing on that. I
Sure.
just had an in-flight dream 2 nights ago. It's the first time in 7 years, and I felt like I was flying, and I was just lifted right up, and I went where I wanted to go. And this is one of the characteristics of being abducted, or ET control of your memories and their input that they put into you, and that's why you have these dreams. Actually, they can tell you some of the future. I've had some futuristic dreams in which I they told me something's going to happen in the future. Have you had those types of dreams, Mike?
Um, I I just remembered the one I wanted to share with you, and yeah, I mean, some of them seem apocalyptic, and I gather that from other fellow experiencers is there is some apocalyptic messages there. This one that I had, I was with my Aunt Cindy. Now, my Aunt Cindy has been involved in quite a few of my experiences and very integral key points in my life. I was walking on a beach with my Aunt Cindy. I was holding her hand, and there was nothing but beached whales as far as the eye could see,
Hmm.
beached humpback whales. And, you know, I looked high and low for all the different messages of that, and you're going to find everything from high and low. Uh, but I didn't smell any death, but these whales were beached. I do believe that they were dead. But it was a weird feeling because it was a beautiful moment. It was a beautiful, comfortable moment holding my Aunt Cindy's hand, walking on this beach, except for the fact that it was full of dead whales.
Wow.
So yeah, that one's I would consider to be apocalyptic in a sense, and history has shown lots of different species of whales have been beached. Hundreds and hundreds and thousands here. It does happen. So I believe that maybe these were messages of that, but to me, I don't think it's a message that I could just use one time. I think it's a message that I can reach into and use at different types and different parts and moments of my life.
Right.
um, I reflect on these visions and use them in different ways, you know?
Right.
And like I was telling you, when I was 12 years old, I thought that that was my very first UFO experience. And I could be very well sadly mistaken because after I finally, dived into these UFO groups and started talking to other fellow experiencers, I had a friend of mine that his name was Neil Bowman, and he said, "Now, Michael, have you had any other paranormal experiences besides your UFO?" And I said, "Yeah." I gave him the whole okey doke, "Yeah,
Yeah.
I do, but I don't. I feel like it discredits my experience." And he goes, "Well, let's hear it." So 2 years before that 1985 experience, so that would place me at 10 years old. I was still in Hayward, but once again we were at someone else's house. Um, I remember waking up in the middle of the night. Now this is lucid. This is me being awake. I woke up physically in my bed, and I looked to the ground, and the small section of my bedroom has now turned into a diner, and there was a waitress. She's wearing 1950s, 1960s waitress attire. She's about 4 foot tall, and everything around her is in proportion to her size. So it looks like it's taken about a quarter of my bedroom on the right side as I'm looking from my bed, looking down. This waitress was walking towards me. She was made up of static. Everything was static. Everything was like the old school static TV snow.
Mhm.
Poltergeist, they're here.
Yeah.
Uh, but it was very detailed, and I could tell you that she was wearing was 1950s, 1960s. I can hear the customers talking. It was a busy diner. There wasn't a seat that wasn't taken. I can hear multiple conversations, the mumbling of multiple people talking, and I can also hear the silverware hitting the plates. It was as if this diner was here in my bedroom. So I call out to my mother down our short hallway, and I go, "Mom, can I come sleep with you?" And she says, "Sure, honey, come on." So then I realized, well, then I'm going to have to make the next step here would be to, actually walk across, this lady. My last words to my mom before I blacked out that night was, "But mom, I'm afraid to step on this lady."
Oh,
And that's all I remember. I don't remember waking up the next morning going, "Mom, do you remember about last night?" It wasn't until years later that I started having this conversation and with my mom. And it's just tough getting any validation out of my mother because of uh addictions and things like that. I'll just say it's hard to get any validation, but she does recall that night. She just doesn't remember me ever coming into the room.
right. It's just like my mom recalling my UFO experience when I come in late and I had a lot of missing time and she was mad. But what I was going to tell you also, you were in a dimensional drift or a time drift. You saw something dimensional that happened and they're tuning into you. I had the same thing happen to me in Sedona. I saw something like from 1957. A car pulled up and these people walked out and they had this little girl on a leash, and that's weird. So it's a dimensional time slip that you went through, and being an experiencer. And now most experiencers that I talk to, they want to be called contactees because you are a contactee because you're receiving these messages and the frequency they're communicating with you. And be blessed, I guess.
Yeah.
It's a godly thing. It's all about God and enlightenment and consciousness. Mike, just
uh,
continue on, brother.
Okay, very well. Yeah, I was wondering if that was a screen memory or something. They can appear any way that they would
Mhm.
want to, especially to children. They don't want to frighten you, all that bad. Uh, but yeah, so I really got jaded about people not believing my story, my experience. So it was much easier, I found, for me to just fall back into the social programming. And I was always a new kid at a I was always a new kid out of school somewhere.
Yeah,
But we always ended up coming back to this neighborhood, where I seen the UFO. So I did spend a, a great amount of my childhood, quality childhood, there in this neighborhood and in the schools that are adjacent to it around this neighborhood.
right.
And you know, I I just let it go for a long time. Every once in a while, I'd bring it up, and and some people would believe me, some people wouldn't. Uh, it's seeing is believing. I understood that.
Oh, your
And
sincerity, Mike, your sincerity is really coming across as the is really believable. I've been doing this for some time, and it does touch you in your heart and in your mind what's going on all around you when you see these types of things. You're being told things that are on the other side of us. It's like when I those things first started happening to me, I thought there is another side to us. We go somewhere after we pass here, or we leave our
yeah,
bodies, and you know that too. You spoke about the angelic effect and the biblical effect of which continue.
yeah.
I just like to
Okay.
insert. I just want to give you some positive reinforcement that yes, those things happen to all contactees.
Yeah. Um, so like I said, I fell back into the social programming. It was just much easier like that until the internet came out, and Facebook, and uh all these groups and things. So I just started engulfing myself with in UFOs, and I started joining all these groups. And I thought at the time, the larger the better. And I would join these really big groups, and I would try to share my experience, and I would just get, people would make fun of you, and oh, what kind of dope, I wish I was on, what kind of you were having, like, which isn't cool with me because my whole family's had addictions with alcohol, pills, you name it. And not me, it wasn't me.
Right.
I was sober as a stone. But
Tell me, are you a musician, Mike?
no, I'm not.
Okay. It happens to a lot of musicians too. They tune into you. through frequencies, but you don't have to be a musician. That's just one of the five, I guess, tuning in frequency types of people, that characteristics that they go to, but and family history also of UFO and ETs, in which I've had. And I don't know if you had any, Mike. Did you have any family that had ET experiences?
I used to always say no, Dave, until I actually took into consideration the only experience that my mother shared with me. She was up in the Hayward Hills with a couple of friends. It was a beautiful day. They were having somewhat of a picnic, listening to music. And she told me that all of a sudden the music stopped, her friends stopped, everything just stopped. And Jesus appeared in front of her with his white robe and satch. And she said that his face was just conveniently covered to where she couldn't see the details of his face, but she knew darn well who he was. And without him opening his mouth or speaking, he asked her if she was ready. And she answered him without opening her mouth. And she thought in her head, no, I'm not ready. And just like that, the music kicks back on, her friends start moving again, everything's back to normal. My mom told me that I was the only one that she had shared that experience with. And when she told me this, I had seen the UFO already. I had experienced that. I didn't believe her.
Right.
But what nerve? It's so weird how we do that sometimes. The nerve of me to not believe somebody that's telling me this crazy story, that experience, when I've myself has had a crazy experience. But yeah, Dave, my father has never admitted to me that he ever experienced anything. Only my mother, and it was Jesus.
Right.
My son's 26 years old. His name is Lucas, and he has a lot of lucid dreams of breaking out of matrices.
Mhm.
And he's experiencing the black spear for some reason in his dreams, which is something that I have captured on film. Um, I, do you know Marisol Smiley? I
Yes.
think you,
Yes.
yeah.
Yeah.
So she's a really good friend of mine, and I remember one day she was experiencing cubes in her pictures in the sky, squares, and I had some nerve that day, I tell you. But I love Marisol so much. Um, I offered her some pixelation explanation for some of these cubes that she was capturing on her camera. So I didn't want to disrespect her or anything like that. It was just a friendly, let me see if I can do this. I grab my phone, I go out to the balcony, and I just randomly take a picture of the sky, Dave. I'm
Mhm.
not nothing in particular. I just wanted to make sure it was up in the sky. And I got some phone lines in there. I got some treetops, something that I can focus in on and explain. Look, if you zoom into anything, it's going to pixelate and start to appear like a cube, right?
Mhm.
So that was my plan. That's what I wanted to do for Marisol. So when I took this picture, I looked at it and I go, okay, what am I going to zoom in on here? The treetops, the phone lines, or this black spear? So I zoom into the black spear and I'm like, this is in the picture. So without moving, Dave, I took another picture in the same spot to debunk it. I've watched enough Ghost Adventures to know that you want to try to debunk this.
Right.
So I took another picture, and sure enough, it's not in the picture. I've never experienced anything like that. Up until that point, I had experienced a lot of white orbs, yes, but black, no. I've never even thought of that.
Black
Uh,
holes could be that the sun is not shining in the right proper direction, developing a shadow of the craft. Maybe that's the reason. Mike, I do know Marisol, and she's got a lot of pictures that she posts on Facebook, and she seems like she has quite a few sightings or anomalies that she picks up. And I've talked to her, by text, and some of the things that she's gone through, and she's a contactee, and but she's a little reluctant, just like you were back some years ago, of getting your story out. I I did the same thing when I was back in the '70s and '80s, and I was younger, and I didn't really talk a lot about it. And my mom, just like your mom, my mom had a lot of experiences, and she didn't start telling me until in the '90s because I started talking about uh, the other event that happened to me in '95. I saw a little gray right next to my bed, and I told her about that, and then she started opening up to me. And my other brothers tell me, why doesn't she tell us that? I said, because you're not an experiencer and you're not relating to her on the level that she wants you to, because she wants to be believed. But yes, your mom's story sounds like it started with your mom, just like with my family. It goes through family DNA frequency lines. So yeah, Mike, continue on, brother.
Okay. I met my wife when I was 19 years old. She was 17. We've been together for a really long time. We've got two boys, 26 and 20. Um, she's always known that I experienced a UFO, and I never went into great detail with her. You know how you can just tell right in the beginning of a conversation that you can only go so far with certain people, and that's fine, and it's totally understandable. But I know, she's experienced ghosts before, her and her family. So, I know that she is open to the paranormal.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, but when I finally became brave enough and confident enough to say, "Hey, I was taken. I've got missing time. I believe it was an abduction." I tried to have this conversation with my wife about a year and a half ago, and the look in her eyes really broke my heart. I could tell that she did not believe me. She said that I've had a long time to think about this. You know what I mean? To make up, probably is what she was getting at. And we had a bit of an argument, and there was some friction there for quite a few months. Um, it just really broke my heart because it's something that I'm so passionate about, and it's such a big part of my life. And I feel like I'm forced to not talk about it or to embrace this thing when she's around. I would have to take my conversations outside. I didn't know how to talk in front of her about these things. I was just embarrassed. So I started praying. I said, Lord, if it's in the cards, I would like her to experience one of these things with me. I just thought that it would make things easier
Yes.
because the path that I felt that we were going, I didn't want to break up with her,
Mm-hmm.
Um, so July 21st, Dave, last year, um, out front having a cigarette, and all of a sudden I see this object coming from my right side, and it's diagonally coming over us. And I didn't want to embarrass myself in front of my wife. So I said, "Hey, what kind of drone is that?" You know? Um, and she didn't say nothing. We just were looking at it. And as it was beginning to start to flirt with going over me, I started to notice like it was rolling, it was rotating. I didn't know if it was flipping, rolling, rotating. I even thought at one point, is this thing shape shifting?
Yeah, they do.
Um, I was confused,
Mm-hmm.
and I didn't think I realized what it was until me and my wife were in the bedroom talking about it, and I was already drawing what I seen because it gave me a message of light. It gave me a message of 444, and I'll explain that a little further in a second. But when we were in the bedroom and I was drawing a picture of the lights that I seen, the circular white dots of lights and the white lines that followed these white dots, my wife took the pencil and she drew a picture. She circled two of the lights, two or three. I think it was just two of the lights, and she goes, "That's what I seen." So I go, "Oh, okay. So you didn't get to see this actual, I got to see the actual full message of what it did." And she said that it reminded her of Saturn. And I go, "What do you mean it reminded you of Saturn?" And she goes, "Well, the ring." And then And then Dave, I couldn't help but to think of the wheel within the wheel. And I go, you mean like the wheel within the wheel? Because that would really blow me away, because that was not a vision. That was an actual craft that we seen outside. And so now I'm here with this, what's the message? What's the message here? I've experienced the UFO. I've experienced the vision of the wheel within the wheel. And now I am actually experiencing a physical craft that resembles the wheel within the wheel.
Mm.
And when it was directly overhead, Dave, it seemed to slow up whatever movement it had going on. And it paused just enough to show me like one of the lines around the cylindrical object. Like I didn't get a full-fledged look of this craft because it was moving around,
Mhm.
but it did slow up enough to where it gave me a very beautiful bright light message. And the only reason why I say message is because my friend Angel Thacker, she always tells me, she goes, slow down, what's the message here? And that's what I remember thinking was, all right, slow down. What's the message? If they're an advanced species trying to communicate with, old Mike Walker here, that's not fully aware of all of his capabilities, maybe they would try to use Morse code. So I look up the dot, dot, dot line, dot, dot, dot line, dot, dot, dot line. I look it up and I'm expecting to see something that I can spell out in Morse code, like, hi, we're here, hello. And come to find out, it's an actual number. The number that they gave me was 444. So, of course, that's an angelic number.
Yes,
They
I've heard
have
of that.
there's many angelic numbers, but this angelic number in particular, 444, is telling me that my guardian angels are protecting me.
Mhm.
They're they're strong with me.
Right.
It's within my family. It's something's about to happen, something that you have been working on, something that you have been praying for is going to begin to happen.
Mhm.
And so, that message really blew me away. One quick synchronicity that happened after this experience, Dave, and I'll take a break on that, is my very next cigarette break, which wasn't very long, by the way. It, it wasn't too long before I was back out there in that same spot again. This time I'm by myself, and I'm extremely happy about the experience that I just shared with my wife. And she's not gonna go out and become a ufologist or anything, but now it's at least it's something that we could talk about. It's a start.
Did you get vindication, Mike, from
I
your wife?
Yeah, absolutely,
Really?
absolutely.
Great. Yeah, my
Uh,
wife did the same thing, and we've been married 10 years or so, and she knew about my UFO history and everything before that. The 2 years leading up to meeting her, it was very had a lot of things going on, but she has witnessed a lot of paranormal stuff, things touching her, something in the room. She knows that there's something. She calls them my buddies. So she's been a believer, and she's an academic, and she's also religious, a real fundamentalist, and she is open and she knows about my experiences. She's witnessed those little things that's happened, and so she knows I'm not kidding, because she's been scared a few nights. But that vindication of a loved one, especially your wife, that supports you, that's great, Mike, and I'm glad that happened.
my next cigarette break, Dave, when I went outside by myself, I had two barn owl screeching right over my head, directly over my head. We have a relationship with one owl out on our balcony at nighttime. Every once in a while, we'll hear him screeching from a certain distance or whatever, and we can kind of judge how far he is and where we should probably be looking. And sure enough, 9 times out of 10, shortly after the screech, uh, there he is. Either my wife will say there he is, and you see these owls in the sky at dark, and they look like lights. They look eerie, but it's a beautiful thing. And we always had this relationship with this owl, and I actually make a lot of weird sounds with uh, that a lot of other people can't make. and I screech back to the owl. And one particular night, he came really close, like near my gutter, because I must have said something, you
Yeah.
know. And so after this experience, when I was out there having a smoke by myself, I can hear the screech once again, and directly flying over me is not one, but two. And it told my heart, there's your experience that you prayed for, Mike.
You know,
There's one owl
yeah,
for you, one owl for your wife.
right.
That's what I got out of it.
In my new book, I talk about shape shifting, and ETs and spiritual beings, even angels, can be in animal form or any form that they can to attract your attention. And that sounds like a synchronicity, a shape shifting form. And they talk about owls being one of the critters is very popular with a lot of these supernatural beings and ETs. So, yeah,
Right.
that's experience is great. We might want to get down into what you're doing. You got this New Age Guild company, Paranormal, and you got the Ophanum
Oh,
Energy.
yeah.
Let's talk about those things because we're nearing. Just
Okay, very well. I was surprised that a lot of people haven't heard of the angelic realm of the first spear. Um, I believe I'm having these experiences with the Ophanum, which I believe we call many things. I believe we call them the wheel within the wheel. I believe we could call them even the Merkabah.
Mhm.
Uh, I believe we can even call them the spirit's chariot. So I had no choice but to open up my own page on Facebook and and just I really I got into meditation. It's all these experiences has led me to this, Dave. It's led me to self-care, self-love, crystals, meditation. All these things were really coming at me. The flower of life is something that I seen in the meditation I've seen before, but I couldn't tell you anything about it until I've studied it. Um, I just started making Oregon energy. I started putting my positive energy on this table that I have here in my room, and just pouring love into to being creative. I've got a creative bug. So I make jewelry, I make trinkets, I make resin epoxy molds, pyramids. And it's all from the Ophanum energy.
Right. It is. It's from out there coming into you and it's pushing you. And I just like we spoke before the show. I want to see a book. I want you to do a book.
Yeah,
Just do it. Just you
I
just
will.
make up your mind and do it, Mike.
I
But
will.
yeah, you got some interesting things here, and you also been on a couple of shows. The UFO Witness and the
Yeah.
Experiencer Show. How
UFO,
were
yeah.
those?
Okay, yeah, UFO Witness was a video that I sent in a couple years ago that didn't make one of their seasons. But the next season of UFO Witness on Travel Channel, they began that season, and I got an email from one of the producers, and he's like, "Hey, we would like to use your video that you sent in." And I'm like, "Sure, yeah, go right ahead." And I actually forgot about it, Dave, until one night. Me and my wife were sitting here watching TV, and we love paranormal ghost adventures. We live on the Travel Channel.
Ancient aliens, archaeology.
Yeah,
Love that too.
and sure enough, there I am. I'm talking. They only used a brief part of my video, but it blew me away. Sitting here
Oh,
at home with
great.
my wife, and I ran into the living room. I go, Lucas, Lucas, they used my
A
video.
contribution to a disclosure. Okay, we're closing out the show. Is
Okay.
there a website or somewhere they can go and see some of the things that you've experienced?
Oh, just come visit us on Paranormal Fridays on Facebook. We have a page called Paranormal Fridays, and I've got everything linked through Paranormal Fridays. It's my backdrop right here, Paranormal Fridays,
Right.
with me and Angel Thacker, and you'll be able to find my Ophanum Energy page. And I also have an private experiencer group.
Okay, good, great. Mike Walker, thank you so much for you coming on and disclosing what you have there. And it does take a little bit of guts, but also you're driven to do this. And I thank you so much for disclosing your experiences. This has been the Dave Emmons Show with Mike Walker. Good night or good day, everybody. Thank you so much.